Good evening, everyone. Happy St. Patrick's Day and welcome to the presenter series. This is our third episode, I believe, in the presenter series, preparing for the HypnoExpo 2025, which will be in Orlando, Florida, coming soon on the 16th through the 18th of May. Here's a catalog. Most of you should have gotten this in the mail if you are members of the association, and if not, well, give them a call. It's also available online, by the way, and we're looking forward to it. And during this presenter series, what we do is we spend a couple of half-hour segments each week talking to people that are doing the pre and post-conference programs, the presenters of those programs, so that you can find out what we're up to and decide which ones you will be interested in. Of course, you'll be interested in all of them, but you can only be in one place at a time. So which ones you're going to be in will be the question. So we're glad you're here and we're ready to get things going. How are you doing, Karen?
I'm doing fine, thank you.
Happy
Erin
St.
Bra
Patty's.
and all of that. Happy St. Patrick's.
Is the river green in Chicago?
Well, it's always a little green, but it's fading now. It was very, very green over the weekend, and it's beginning its fade now.
Hmm.
It's a lovely tradition.
It is a lovely tradition. All right. Well,
So, are we ready to start?
I think we are ready to start. Would you be so kind as to introduce our first presenter this
I
evening?
certainly, I certainly will. And we have an order that we're presenting in, correct? Jessica is coming first. Is
Oh,
that is
is
that
that
right?
right? That's that's fine with me. Uh,
Okay,
yeah, yeah,
I just
sure.
want to make sure that we were on the same page. Yes, Jessica, that's who I have as our first guest, and Michael will be joining us right afterwards. So don't go anyplace because we'll be hearing from that too. Jessica is the recipient of IAC's 2023 Educator of the Year Award. She's often described as an old soul because of her many experiences. She learned hypnosis at the age of 13 and credits hypnosis for saving her life. Now, we're going to talk about Jessica's post conference offering of Train the Parts Trainer. But before we get there, Jessica, I got to know about hypnosis saving your life. Please start out by telling us that story.
Well, sure. That's on my website as well. But when I was about 13, we had my cousin the same age passed away. It was a freak accident. Um, I didn't handle it well. And through the course of the school wanting to just not have me there because I was not dealing well with life, my dad found a psychologist named Ruth, and she knew hypnosis and she did all the stuff. And she said, you know what? Just going to teach you hypnosis from the ground up. And this is going to help you help yourself for the rest of your life. She said, there's nothing wrong with you. You're a child. Your family experienced a tragedy. And I want to teach you a life skill. From there, so it was really compassionate on her part and very considerate as well in the long run. But fast forwarding that as well, I don't even remember the year, but it was at least 25 or so years ago now. Living in Florida, I had a near death experience, and coming back was not fun. Could not use my body at all. So the hypnosis stuff started coming back to me, and I said, well, I'm going to start imagining moving my body again and being able to talk and walk. And so today you would hardly know that there's anything wrong with me. But yeah, I still carry some scars from that occasionally. But it's really saved my life on multiple occasions. So.
Very Ericksonian, right? Very
Exactly.
Ericksonian. Back when you were first introduced, did she actually call it hypnosis? Or was she teaching you hypnosis by another name?
No, she called it hypnosis very much. And I think part of the reason she felt going that direction, because at 13, I was the little girl who sat in her office. I sat on my hands and I said, nobody is going to touch me. Nobody is going to do anything to me. And she said, you can sit in the corner. You could sit on your hands. That's just fine. I'm still going to teach you how to control your inner state and what's happening.
It is such a wonderful thing to talk to presenters and other people about how they found hypnosis, right? And
Mhm.
boy, when you learn it from the inside out, isn't that a great way to go?
Yes.
So what do you do in your parts trainer training to teach it from the inside out?
Well, I have big shoes to fill, but to teach it from the inside out is to walk you through what Roy and his wife have put together some materials and to familiarize you with those. And we read through those, walk you through the PowerPoint and some different stuff. But kind of through that process, if there's 4 students in the class or 2 or 10, we take turns reading that to each other. So it's as if you're teaching parts therapy right during the training to get you used to the process. Um, Also, if anyone is not comfortable with a certain verbiage or how something's presented, kind of troubleshooting that in class, because I know I just troubleshooted for another instructor today. She's like, I just did a training and my student didn't grasp this concept. So I spent a little bit of time with her trying to figure out how can you present this to help your student understand. So very much going through the materials as if we are teaching each other because we're all in this to be trainers. Um, and sometimes we have people in the class who just took the 2-day pre-conference parts therapy. So they're very new and they really don't have any experience. It's not optimal, but it's allowed and it allows them a chance to go over the material again in a different way. Because as you know, well, you're an instructor as well, Karen, but the teacher always learns the most. So if I put you into that role of teacher right away, it helps you learn that much faster.
So is there a there is no prerequisite for taking the parts training, the pre-conference workshop, but is there a prerequisite for taking the parts trainer?
Yes.
Post-conference.
I would like you to have the pre-conference parts therapy training or have taken it in the past from Roy or have taken a parts therapy equivalent through another trainer. And ideally, there is a little bit of a prerequisite for the pre-conference parts therapy. I would like you to have hypnosis training and, or at least
Yes.
understand the basics, and then a little bit of regression training as well. It just helps you do parts therapy that much better. Because we don't have time in 2 days for me to teach you hypnosis or regression. So I would love for you to have those under your belt and then also have taken that, especially for the post conference, have already taken those 2 days of parts therapy with an instructor on some level.
You know, there's all sorts of stuff that is parts therapy by another name.
Yeah.
So if somebody says, "Oh, I've studied internal family systems," does that count?
Yes, absolutely.
So it doesn't have to be Roy's parts therapy training. It can,
Yeah.
because all of it is parts therapy, right?
Yes. I've been reading some of the other books that kind of Tebbets and Roy and Hunter have built this program through, and they're fascinating. And I want all the instructors of parts therapy to read those. It's just so fascinating. So if they've already taken that sort of training, or maybe they're a psychologist or psychiatrist and they were introduced to those sort of variations of parts, absolutely they can come.
And they can do the parts therapy trainer part. That
Uh,
would fulfill the requirement.
yes.
And is there a certificate that goes along with this?
There sure is. You get your certificate as a parts therapy trainer. There's also an optional certificate. You can reach out to IACT or IMDHA and you can receive an extra certificate from them if you want to have 2. But yes, you will get a certificate included as well as just ongoing support. I'm there for you as your fellow trainer. Like I had the one trainer contact me today. She was having some trouble with a student, and just to talk it out and say, are you missing something or is your student missing something? Because there's nothing worse than being that student who's not grasping the concept because it's just not working. And I've been on that side of it in parts therapy where in the beginning I struggled when I first took it as well. and it took me a while. I needed to hear it presented a different way. So I hope during this that, especially teaching this last year at the conference, we presented it a couple different ways in class because we had a couple language barriers and cultural barriers as well, and things don't always transfer across. So we had to talk it out in class, and so we're training each other through the whole way to make it easy.
And what's the advantage of being a trainer, parts therapy trainer?
The advantage of being a parts therapy trainer is you learn the most. Uh, but also that you get the, I would guess the honor would be maybe the right word, of training other hypnotists or anyone in the therapy realm. You get to train them and kind of bring them into the realm of parts therapy and hypnosis. And so if you're already a hypnosis trainer, it's a no-brainer to add this to your curriculum.
Is it important to already be a hypnosis trainer before doing parts therapy training?
Not necessarily. I know last year there were several who were not, hypnosis trainers, and they took it anyways. It'll enhance your skill set either way. So it's not a requirement by any means, but I think for a lot of people, it kind of whets your appetite to become a trainer. Maybe not a full-blown hypnosis trainer, but maybe you specialize in parts therapy or regression and really help people dig into the meat of it and become good at what they do.
So if you're a parts therapy trainer, can you also then offer that same certification that through IACT and like that? The same you were talking about?
Yeah, you can reach out to IACT IMDHA and set up as a specialty trainer, as quite a few of you on the call tonight are. You offer specialty trainings through them. And again, they will issue certificates as well as you, and we're just growing our hypno family.
Nice. Excellent.
So kind of walk me through what this, I know you talked about reading things and doing some role playing, but walk me through what the 2 days of post-conference training will be like.
Sure. So first off, I go over everything that is included in this. That's kind of Roy's program that him and his wife put together, and get you familiar with that content and what's there, because there is a lot of content.
I'm just going to stop you for 1 second. I'm sorry for being rude. It's the second time I've heard you say Roy and his wife, and I haven't heard Joanne's name attached to this before. So perhaps it's just I haven't heard it, but tell me about Joanne's involvement in this.
Yeah, so Joanne had the lovely skill of helping Roy put together the PowerPoint for this presentation. That was kind of her support of Roy in this project. So every time he teaches it, he always gives her credit for so much of just a few little animations and adding audio files and just some of the artwork, because he said men just don't know how to make things look the best.
Jessica, I am so old. I took parts therapy from Roy before he used PowerPoint. I'm just saying. So I didn't get the introduction of Joanne being a part of that.
Yeah, so he always, of course, brings her up, or at least I've always heard him talk about her. That. So getting you familiar with that and reading over, there's some scripts for training your students. So, checking out those, and also getting you on to the extra material that we have for exclusively for the trainers. Some extra resources, direct links to certain things that you can add into your training, or just further study for yourself. And that includes, access as long as you're a trainer, or you've taken the training, it's there for the rest of your life. Also, we're going to talk about some variations in parts, because that's a big question that comes up. So talking to the different parts of your body. So let's say someone has cancer that comes in to see you, or someone's struggling with a sprain or a bruise, and they want to talk to that part of their body. So doing some variations and in parts, and teaching about grief and pain. And, so it's not just parts, like the beginning of the conference, we're really just going to focus in on parts therapy, but there's so much more. You can talk to, your body parts, you can talk to illnesses, you can talk to wounded parts of yourself and grieving parts. And there's so many different ways to take that. So getting the trainers comfortable with going down those avenues and including that in your curriculum. And gosh, I don't know what else to say.
I love the fact that you brought up talking to body parts. I did a wonderful demonstration in a class once, and the woman, we were doing parts, and the woman began to talk. She was lonely, she was unhappy, she was feeling miserable, and the part that came forward called itself kidney. And we said, that's interesting. Are you a kidney? And she said, yes. Or it said, yes, I'm the remaining kidney. I've been left alone here because she had a kidney removed. And she said, I'm very lonely here. I have to do all of this work on my own and nobody's helping me. And the client instantly started taking better care of herself, eating better, exercising more, and doing the things that she needed to do to help this kidney out because it was being overworked. It was just a beautiful session and, gave her instant ideas, her own ideas for making changes in the way she was taking care of herself. So it was a lovely session. That's the kind of thing that you do with parts therapy, right?
Yes, exactly.
And very hard to come up with scripts for this.
Mm-hmm.
You got to be flexible. You got to be able to move around. You got to be able to deal with, what do you mean you're a kidney? That's not really the way to approach it probably in the session.
No, not at all. So that's why, the training or the hands-on, just talking through a parts therapy session. Just again, it's framework. You learn the framework, learn the steps, and then you learn. It's kind of like dancing. You learn the basic steps, and then you learn the fancy stuff that you could do with those basic steps.
Right. Are there any other questions while we're just stop down for here a moment? Mary Beth, was that a hand raise from you?
No, but there's somebody in the chat box asking if they can ask a question.
Sure. Okay.
Yes.
Yeah, Laura.
So Laura, yes, please.
Hi, guys. I'm calling in from New Zealand, a little bit further away.
Yeah, thanks for joining us.
I have a question. I went to Roy Hunter and I participated in his parts therapy training. And actually, he was my mentor and graduate advisor for a doctorate I did in clinical hypnotherapy. So my question is, I'm actually writing a children's book. I'm running a whole series of books for children called Cuddle Up and Good Night, and they focus on different topics. And so you mentioned using grief, using parts therapy for grief, because I'm writing one called Cuddle Up and Grieve. So it's meant for a child to process through their emotions of grief, of loss. They could have lost a teddy bear up to losing a parent, just any type of grief that they may have. So how would you recommend using parts therapy, like calling that part out?
Sure. Well, great question. Thanks for being on too.
Thanks for having me.
Grief is one of my other passions in hypnosis as well. So I love your question. A lot of the ways I approach it is if it's a loved one or even an object, as long as the passing or the loss has been, a reasonable period of time. So if it's an object, maybe a week, or a couple days, but if it's a actual death of a person, we need to let normal grief take its course, and normal natural grief, at least let a year of time pass before you do any hypnosis whatsoever in that area, because we need to let the body just do what the body normally does. However, if it is, let's just say a child lost their favorite blanket, you can have the blanket be a part and, talk to the blanket, and maybe the blanket is missing the child as well, or maybe the blanket left so that the child could discover other friendships and grow in ways that the child could not grow if it still was attached to this blanket. It's really, I would love to brainstorm with you on this and, throw some more ideas out there. It sounds really fun. But if it is the passing of a loved one, and it's been that appropriate period of time that's passed, I often will approach it as that person that has passed is a part, because they are a part of us on some level. We've been with them for so long and we know them intimately. So they are a part of us and they always will be. And doing parts, and usually when I do that, it's somewhere in the session. They always meet each other at whatever distance is safe for them in hypnosis. So sometimes it's sitting next to them on a bench, or it's seeing them walking down the beach a ways away.
Ooh, I like that.
Yep, seeing, and that's very common for people. Love the beach imagery, and it's very safe there for a lot of people. And then with grief is I always allow them to, in the privacy of their own mind, to have that conversation that they never felt like they got the chance to have. And that's been so important now after COVID. I've worked with a lot of clients that way, but allow them in the privacy of their own mind and body to have those, to talk, tell them, hey, I got some cool stuff happening, or life is really crappy, whatever they want to talk about. And
Well, the book is only meant to last 10 minutes, and it's really positive affirmations. It's not truly hypnosis because they haven't signed a consent form and they're too young, and the numerous things. But I wanted something like, I like walking down the beach. I like that imagery and privacy in their own mind, because you don't know when they're going to buy this book for the child. They could buy it the day the parent dies.
Yeah.
They could buy it the day the blanket is lost, or whatever. And so it kind of has to be generic.
Sure. Well,
Yeah, and not too heavy, because like you said, different people process through their emotions at different times. So this may be a book that they read the child for a year, processing through the loss of a parent.
Yeah. Well, going that direction, then what I would do is, after you have like the meeting of that object as the other part, at the end of my grief sessions is always, you receive a gift from your loved one or the object that was lost. And if you're at the beach, it could be maybe you find maybe they pull it out of their pocket, or
Oh, I know what they find. They've got every one that I send out. I have because my thing is all hugs, and there's a thing called a pocket hug, and it's a little heart, and it says, here's a pocket hug for you. So that's what I can use as a tie-in, is the pocket hug.
Yes, absolutely. Anything like that is completely fine. I just always end those grief sessions with a gift from that. And it's, again, mine are generally loved ones, but for a child, it could be a gift from the blanket, a gift from the teddy bear that was lost, a gift from the Nookie, the pacifier that was no longer part of their life, right?
Yeah.
So,
well, because the mechanism is the same. Losing something, it's exactly the same, no matter how small it is, because it was important to that child.
Absolutely.
Like we've all had that blanket we loved.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Oh no, I love this. Thank you, because I'm writing this one right now.
Oh, perfect.
Well, this is exciting, and I want to add something, Jessica, that I know I hadn't prepared you for, but I wonder, you started to answer right in the right direction, so I'm real curious about this. I've done a bunch of work with grief as well, and I'm interested not only in the grief that comes from the loss of a person, but you mentioned a blanket, for example, right? But it also occurs to me that people grieve over the loss of a job, or maybe even the loss of a dream, or something like that. And so I'm just struggling a little bit, but only a little bit. I think I can figure it out, and I'd love to hear your insight on it, with how one would, I guess the word is anthropomorphize that dream so that you could communicate with it or interact with it.
Sure.
'Cause I could easily talk with the blanket. That's all right. I've done that before.
So with parts and like losing a job, for instance, I worked with a few people who have retired or been forced to retire. So it could very much be talking with that part of them that was that employee that did that job, and helping them realize that they had a very successful career, and that now they're capable of so much more. And maybe, and again, this all comes from the client, but what are you capable of now that you're not tied down by this job, that your life is not now stuck by parameters of hours of the day. You now have freedom. Who would you like to become? And honoring that part for all the wisdom that it carries would be one direction to go.
Mhm. I'm also thinking about something like, say, a dancer, for instance, who sustains some kind of, I don't know, spinal injury or a leg or something like that, and is no longer able to dance.
Sure. So again, talking, uh, it'd probably start with talking to that leg and, thanking it for doing, its job that it did do in all the beautiful years of dancing, and maybe asking the leg what advice it has to offer the rest of the body at that point.
Yeah.
Because you never know which part is going to bring this out. But if the leg was the injured part, I would start by asking the leg and say, what would you suggest that we do now, or that the client does now? It may have an answer, it may not. And that might be something you'd have to, it could turn into more of a spiritual session, because we need to step further outside and look at a bigger picture.
Sure.
Um,
Yeah, lovely.
yeah, starting there.
Fascinating work, and it's work where you really get to stay present doing client-centered work. It's great stuff. And besides that, it covers so much. When you're training this, you're going to be training, not necessarily training, but inner child work is parts work. All of that stuff intertwines into parts work, and to train it to help you advance the field with this material, great stuff. So
Yeah.
Jessica, thank you very much. There'll be 2 days of parts therapy work, learning parts therapy 2 days before the conference, and then training, parts therapy trainer 2 days after the conference. For these
Yeah.
2 days event, you have to have other training first, not necessarily here, but you have to have some parts therapy training first. But you can take the 2 ahead followed by the 2 at the end, correct?
You can spend 4 days. You can come 2 days before the conference, spend 3 days at the conference with all the great presenters, and then stay 2 days after. You might even run into Michael and his students when we're out and about at lunch and different stuff. So yeah, come and hang out.
Yeah,
Learn.
it's good stuff. Thank you, Jessica, very much for joining us. Jessica Hanson will be teaching both the pre and the post-conference parts therapy work. And I look forward to seeing you in Orlando.
Me too.
It'll be a good time.
All right.
Any final words, Michael, before we move on to our next featured presenter?
Well, I'll tell you, one of the things that I do know is that this next presenter is really an enigmatic individual.
Would you like to introduce this next presenter, or will you let me do it?
I think I'd like you to do it.
I would love to do that. Our next presenter is, of course, the wonderful Michael Watson. And this is a guy who absolutely really doesn't need an introduction. And I could just stop there and turn it over to him. But just in the small chance that you don't know, I want to tell you that he is a wonderful human being, and he's internationally known, a trainer of hypnosis and NLP. Even though he only looks 26, he's had 40 years of experience doing this stuff. It's just amazing. He's a pioneer in online education. We're doing all of this Zoom stuff with IACT and IMDHA because of Michael Watson. He's a great guy, and he is the chief trainer for IACT IMDHA. And he teaches all sorts of stuff, including board certification and train the trainer with IACT and IMDHA. But here he's going to train stress management consultation. And it's the 2-day post-conference event. Michael, gosh, are we in some stressful times these days or what? Please just tell us what you're going to teach, but share some of your wisdom with us here, if you don't mind.
Yeah, speaking of stressful times, right? Yeah, it is. So, and it's always stressful times, isn't it? I mean, if you think about it, when we work with the clients that we work with in hypnosis, um, it occurs to me that there's one way to look at it. There's all kinds of ways, of course, to think about this, but there's one way of looking at all of our clients to realize that the one thing that they all have in common is stress. if somebody is coming to you for anything, there's accompanying that, whatever it is the fact that they're experiencing stress with regard to that issue as well. So it's something that we really can't be without, and that arguably most of us, I think, have more skills that we can use to help people with stress-related issues than we even realize are available to us because it's so central to all of the work that we do. But yeah, this is the certified stress management consultant training. So it is in fact that it's about becoming a stress management consultant with a certification through IACT and IMDHA that allows you to do that. And of course, y'all have been consulting with people with regard to stress already, whether you've taken this course or not. But I hope we're gonna give you a whole lot of additional material that you might not have considered before. I love this class because we get a couple days to do so much stuff, but it is, as you said, Karen, a stress-filled world. We'll make no mistake about that. And what we do with our stress so often just really amplifies it. This is one of the things about some of you may remember a few months ago, several months ago, I was just playing with AI a little bit, and there was stress going on, in life and inside of my head. I heard one day as I was waking up, I was woken up by the voice of Chicken Little, who was in the middle of my head saying, "The sky is falling, the sky is falling, the sky is falling." And I thought, "Oh my God, what do you do when the sky is falling?" And I decided I was going to ask Chat GPT what to do when the sky is falling. And with the assistance of Chat GPT, we came up with the Chicken Little technique, which was quite amazing. But the thing really, it's funny because this is a story we've known all of our lives, and I mean, I hope that most of you know the story at least. And Chicken Little thought that the sky was falling, and she went along and got her friends together. She had to go tell somebody right away, and she talked to Henny Penny and Ducky Lucky and Loosey Goosey, you know. And as she was talking to them, the first thing she said to them was, "The sky is falling, the sky is falling." And they said, "Well, how do you know the sky is falling?" And what had happened, by the way, if you don't remember the backstory, is an acorn had actually fallen out of a tree and hit Chicken Little in the head, and it startled her. So she says, "Well, it fell and it hit me in the head, and it hurt me. So I know that the sky is falling." And her friends all said, "Well, we must go tell the king. We must go tell the king." But immediately when the sky started falling, Chicken Little went to gather people up who are not experts in sky fallingology, if that's a new field. Um, but who were quite ready to give her agreement and to help her. Like, gosh, each new person that she talked to, it got bigger and it got bigger and it got bigger. And it's one of the things I think that we do. Sure, there's a lot of stress in all of our lives, and I think something that we really need to start doing less of is working quite so hard to fan the flames and to get as many people around us to give us agreement. I don't need agreement when for those things that I already feel that I'm right about. I don't need validation. I don't need to convince anybody else of my positions or be convinced of theirs. So I have got this new attitude. It's kind of interesting because it occurred to me, um, probably based, well, I'm sure based on the director technique or something from NLP. But one of the best places in the world is in Cinema 17. You know, when we're in the back row, all the way up in the back row of a movie theater, and the movie is down there on the big screen, and you can sit up here at the back of the movie theater with your popcorn, and you can watch that unfold down there. But you have that ability to adjust your state in such a way that it doesn't ruffle you. And I think that's really important. What I remember in my NLP training was one of the simplest anchors for dissociation was while you're talking to a client, if they start to sort of slip into some unwanted space, I think it was Connie Ray Andreas probably, who would say, "And you can become aware of your back against the back of the chair as you sit there." And it's like, "Oh yeah, yeah, wait, I'm here now." And so I think people need more than ever ways to sort of manage their state in a moment by moment ongoing way. Those of you who were at the virtual chapter last month saw that we had a special little video from our friend Melissa Tears, and she she gave us a couple quick and easy techniques to work with to distance ourselves from stressful experience. And it was quite a nice thing, because I think that's the issue, is not only do we have stress, we will have stress in our lives. Somebody was talking about a stress, what did they call it? Not stress management, but stress elimination or something like that. I have a secret for you. As long as you're breathing, there is stress. There's always going to be stress.
Well, it's not all bad, is it? I mean, a little bit of stress may be motivating, or
Yeah, well, exactly.
you need
If
sometimes.
someone gives me a lovely gift, for example, takes me by surprise, that's a stressor.
Can be, but
But
it
it
depends
can
on
be,
what you
sure.
do with it.
Well, in fact, chemically it is. Any sort of element of surprise or something that moves you suddenly has an impact on your system. The question is, do we have the skills to manage ourselves when things are changing around us? So, um, well, that's the Chicken Little strategy. By the way, there's a prerequisite for this class too. And it's not really a prerequisite. I say it the same way that Jessica says it. It's not required, but I think it's probably a pretty good idea if you already know something about hypnosis, if you already know something about, being able to make changes in your state or to go into a hypnotic state. And trust me, even if you don't, we'll give you some tools to work with for that. But if you think about the things that your clients come to see you for, no matter what they are, whether it's weight loss or smoking or my boss is an asshole, pardon my language, or or whatever it is, it brings stress along with it. And it's something that we ought to be dealing with every client that we work with, is helping them develop the resilience to be able to be with the things that are happening in their lives and in their world. The consequences of stress about. And if you don't, I could scare you to death with statistics. There's big long lists of how terrible it is. And again, if you want to convince people that stress is an awful thing, you can really stress out the population with the statistics. But we do know that 75 to 90% of the doctor's visits in the United States are in some way related to stress. That people that have heavy stress in their lives are 20% more likely to have heart disease. Irritable bowel syndrome is exacerbated by stress, all kinds of mental health issues, of course, and on and on and on. And then in the workplace, there's the lost time at work and the lower productivity that comes from that, as well as the cost of treatment. And I wonder if you realize that that was $77 billion about 20 years ago. I don't even know what the number is now, but I'm sure that it's more than that. It's absolutely outrageous to think about how expensive stress is for companies as well, which is the good news, by the way, for those of us that have an interest in training people in stress, because this course not only is about working with individuals, and you can use it for just that, by the way. You could take this course, you'll get a whole bunch of techniques, in fact 20 some techniques to work with, and the ability to run assessments and tests with people for their stress level, et cetera, et cetera. You could do that just as a private consultant, one-on-one, or with families or in small groups. But you also can take it into the workplace. And part of the program is to help people develop programs that they can take into corporations to do 1 hour or 2 hour or full day workshops in stress management, and all the material that they need to distribute for that. We've got a manual, a nice fat manual. It's about 70 pages that you're welcome to pick and choose from what you want to copy out of and put together in the manual that you're going to use for your 1 hour class or your 2 hour class, or or a whole day, or for goodness sake, you could easily turn it into a full weekend. And and just a little bit, but not a lot, but a little bit of trainer training involved, in the sense that we have a technique, a process that people can learn that will enable you to put together programs and presentations in minutes, on the fly. Some of you already know about it. It's called the format technique, but it's just this lovely little device that you can use, where you ask yourself about 3 or 4 different questions, and the next thing you know, you've got a whole program effortlessly. So people will get a chance to be able to develop programs like that as well, to use with, as I said, with individuals or groups. And I mentioned over 20 different techniques, and starting with some simple stress busters, like the things that we saw from Melissa. And some of them are already really quite out there. And I'm betting when I look around this room that most of you know several of these already. For example, you probably have all been hearing about havening in the last couple of years. Well, what a lovely thing that can be. Or the bilateral stimulation technique. I think most of you probably have learned that before, but if not, oh, I don't know, I don't know if it will work without a body. It's kind of difficult to catch things, but if you know what I'm talking about, so most people have seen this done either by me or by Melissa Tiers, because it gets demonstrated a lot. But the idea is you have an object. In this case, it's a little notebook. It could be an orange, it could be a tennis ball, it could be anything like that. And what's interesting to me about it is that it combines a couple pieces of technology that we know about. It is, in fact, stimulates both sides of the brain. And if you follow it with your eyes and just pass it across back and forth like this, you don't even have to be a good catch. You just have to, pass it back and forth. You can do the same thing that people do with tapping, essentially, is the easy way to talk about how this works. That is, we're gonna take an assessment at the beginning on a scale of 1 to 10. How intense is this now? We're going to do just a little bit of this, and then the next thing that we do is we stop, we check again, and how intense is it now? And it should be a lower number. By the way, if you're a good hypnotist, you probably know that there's a difference between and has it gone down yet, or or and and what's the number now, right? Which tends to move people in the right direction. So, there are things like that, of course, and I'm trying to think what are a couple of the other ones that you know about. There's an eye movement one that comes from NLP, comes from the Andreas specifically, that has to do with following the quadrants and moving them in various directions. And essentially, it's the same thing. Arguably, it's not only bilateral, but it's also just a break state. It's pretty hard to concentrate on the falling sky, you know, and be, passing fruit back and forth, or or moving your eyes around, or whatever it is. And then, of course, you just keep checking in. But those are really simple, basic ones that I think most of you probably already know about. The we're going to do some state management techniques that use things like the swish pattern in NLP, to be able to take yourself from one place to another place, and quickly, in terms of your affect and attitude. Um, Ways to sort of quiet the mind. Here's just one little thing that I think is interesting, and I'd love for you all to try it out. I hadn't planned on talking about this, but it's coming up. Something I've noticed recently: when I wake up in the morning, I can go to bed with a whole lot of stuff on my mind, and my head is just talking, right? A whole lot of voices in my head and stuff. And it's okay, because I've actually learned how to go back to the back row in Cinema 17, even with regard to that voice. But by the morning, it seems that it's all dissipated. And in the morning, as I'm waking up, I've noticed that it's really very quiet. And isn't that a lovely thing? Now, I don't know, some of you have voices in your head, some of you do a lot of have a lot of internal dialogue, whereas others of you may be watching movies in your mind. You've got to have some way to scare the hell out of yourself, however you do it. But with me, it really has been voices and talking, and I love this idea. So there's something that I learned a bunch of years ago that I love to share. I've shared it I've shared it here. Some of you have heard this story before. Several of you have heard this story several times, but I can't help but not tell it. I have been doing hypnosis for some 40 years. And a lot of years ago, when I was living in San Francisco, I had just moved there from Colorado. I lived everywhere. I went from Chicago to Houston to Denver to San Francisco and now here to Florida. And I just moved there from Denver and I was starting my practice over again. It's sort of weird. We work and struggle to get a practice going, and then, we do that for a few years, and now we're in another city and we're back at zero. So I worked for a temp agency for a while, and I got myself an office, and I was starting to promote my practice with no budget to do it, just barely able to pay the rent in this wonderful building at the corner of Powell and Market Street in the middle of downtown San Francisco. And I wanted to have a weekly meeting, which, by the way, evolved into what is now the virtual chapter, the online virtual chapter. But every month, rather, I was going to have a meeting on the first Monday of every month. And I didn't know if anybody would come. I couldn't afford to advertise it. And what I did was I took out an ad for free in a magazine called Heart Dance, which was a lovely little free magazine for old hippies that had, groovy new age seminars. And if it was a free event, you could advertise in it for free in their calendar ads, but you only got 35 words. Okay. Now, I was so anxious about having people come to this thing and so concerned that nobody would show up that I found myself struggling. And here's how anxiety works for me, by the way. I found myself struggling with, well, what if nobody comes? I want to get good refreshments. I want to do all this kind of stuff right. So I'm going to run this ad, but maybe I need to have RSVPs. But oh my God, what if people don't see the ad until the day of the event, and then they don't call me, so they think they shouldn't come because they haven't so I spent most of the 35 words of the ad saying RSVPs aren't necessary, but if you know that you're coming, then go ahead and give us a call because it helps us to plan. And then I had like 7 more words to talk about what the topic was. But in any case, part of my anxiety about it would be that an hour or so before the program, literally, I mean, almost literally an hour, before the program, I'd be arriving at my office, and a voice in my head would say, and by the way, I wonder if you notice the voices in your head don't usually have the sweetest tonality if they're critical voices. They're not like, Mary Beth, we really want you to know how much we appreciate. That's not what they do. It said to me, Michael, are you ready to do this program? And I'm like, and literally stopped me in my tracks. And I'm like, well, I think so. And it says, the voice says, you could have listened to those tapes. That tells you how long ago it was, by the way. You could have listened to those tapes or read those articles or something, and then you'd have more information to be able to put into this thing, and it'd be a whole lot better than it is now. And I'm like, well, I guess I could have, maybe, should have, whatever. And so I'm starting to feel a little dubious about it. And then the voice would say, and look at those refreshments, for God's sake, you're gonna have to do better than this. This is terrible. Nobody's gonna be interested in coming, to spend an evening, with refreshments like that. So this went on for a little while. Then one day a couple of things sort of coincided. I had been watching a videotape of a program that I had attended several years earlier when Richard Bandler was running a seminar on the art of flirtation. Because in NLP, by the way, you can model anything, right? And he had this woman, she was the quintessential flirtatious lady, And we all went and we studied her. We asked her a bunch of questions about what she did. She taught us how to play the look away game and explained to us that you should never be symmetrical. I can't do my shoulders to show you this, but these various sort of things that she did, and then we'd exercise them with each other, and it was just kind of silly, and we had a whole lot of fun. But I remembered that. And she was a lovely name. Her name was Ann Teachworth, a lovely woman, rather. Her name was Ann Teachworth. And then one day I was watching a movie, and I noticed in this movie that there were some kidnappers, and kidnappers have got the coolest toys on the planet. Because you can go to your local kidnapper store. I don't know what you call it in your neighborhood. They call it, I think they have spy stores or something in different places. And some places they're just army surplus or something, or whatever they disguise themselves as. But you can go to these places and you can get this box. Of course, you don't need any of this now with AI, right? But you can get this box, you can strap it onto the telephone so that when you call to ask for the ransom, it doesn't sound like your voice, right? And I thought, now that's kind of an interesting thing. What if I could have a box like that strapped to the inside of my head when I didn't want that voice to do what it was doing? And the best voice that I could think to put on it was Ann Teachworth's, this lady who was from Atlanta, who embodied the Peachtree Southern, Southern woman voice. And so I just practiced it. I just tried it a couple times, right? Just and forgot about it. The next month, the first Monday of the month, an hour or so before my program, a voice in my head said, "Now, Michael, are you ready to do this program?" And I thought, oh my gosh, that didn't hurt at all. You know, she said, you really could have listened to those tapes, maybe, or, read them articles. And I'm like, yes, Anne, I know. I really could have done that. Thanks for reminding me. And these refreshments, child, you really got to do better than these refreshments. But it was like that. See, and the thing to me that was so beautiful about this is you don't change the message. Because quite frankly, if you've got a critical voice that's giving you feedback, it may have something to say that you ought to pay attention to. But it isn't the message that hurts you. It's the tonality, it's the delivery, it's the spirit behind it that makes you feel bad when you hear it. So I thought, yeah, we can do that. So we're going to talk about voices in your head and how it is that you can change them and modulate them and have a different experience. And that's one of the things that I really kind of like. We have a lot of fun with that. There's another thing that I think is important. First of all, right in the middle of this program, we started out in the beginning, all of us that do change work and anything with regard to stress. The first thing they taught us was stress is terrible. The big proverbial they, whoever they are for you, stress is terrible. It'll kill you. And then one of the first things I told you was doctor's visits, heart conditions, all of that stuff, right? Well, I found something interesting out a while ago, and some of you probably already have heard this information. And if you do, I'm so glad that you know it, and I hope you're on the bandwagon with me about it. A lovely woman named Kelly McGonigal has published this material, and she's got some beautiful stuff on TED Talk, I think, and YouTube and all of that. But it comes from the University of Wisconsin. I love Wisconsin. It's where I spent my summers growing up. It's a beautiful place with friendly people, almost as friendly as those folks up in Minnesota. And in 1998, the University of Wisconsin began a study in which they interviewed 30,000 adults and they asked them two questions. The first question was, how much stress have you experienced in the past year? And the answers were, from minimal to medium to a lot, but various levels. And the second question was, do you believe that stress is harmful to your health? And then after 8 years, they did what of course, what they do, that is, they got all the death records together, because that's how you do research like this. And they discovered that the risk of dying was 43% higher for those people who had experienced high stress. But they also discovered that the increased risk applied only to people who also believed that stress was harming their health. People who reported high levels of stress but who didn't view their stress as harmful were not more likely to die. In fact, they had the lowest risk of death of anyone in the study, even lower than those who reported experiencing very little stress. The researchers concluded that it wasn't stress alone that was killing people. It was stress coupled with the belief that stress is harmful. They estimated that over the 8 years they conducted their study, 182,000 Americans may have died prematurely because they believed that stress was harming their health. That's over 20,000 deaths a year. So, according to statistics from the Centers for Disease Control and Prevention, that would make believing that stress is bad for you the 15th leading cause of death in the United States, killing more people than skin cancer, HIV/AIDS, and homicide. To me, that was amazing, because now what we know is we just have to get people to understand that it's not going to kill them. And we can make a real difference. A real difference. And in the meantime, we can give them some tools to work with so that when they find themselves in really stressful situations, that they have ways to sort of manage their state. Because even though it won't kill you, it doesn't feel good to be stressed out, right? And it turns out to be something that's quite optional. We have more ability than we realize to control our experience of the world, because our experience of the world, not the events of the world, mind you, but our experience of the world is the result of how it is that we evaluate the things that are happening to us. So when you can learn how to manage your internal experience, you've got it all. And that's what we want to be able to help people do with this. So we're going to give them skills to do presentations. I'm going to offer them a few paradigms, particularly irrational optimism, which is something I'm finding very, very useful as a way of looking at the world, uh, and uh, and help them become consultants to individuals or corporations, and give them the tools that they need to be able to do that. And that will be on uh,
2 days
Monday.
after the conference. Isn't it nice to know that you can get all of that in just 2 days?
Yeah, isn't it?
And you can walk away with a certification in stress management consultation.
Yeah.
What a wonderful thing.
And if you'll let me, just really quick, I just want to say that I will be doing a free 2 hour workshop on Sunday afternoon called Games Hypnotists Play. I hope you will come, because what we're going to do is all kinds of exciting games and exercises that will just help you hone up your skills. We're going to do some mutual trance work, some metaphor games, and I'm going to introduce you to the Boom Boom Room, which is one of my favorite things. And I know I've got something else. Oh, I know. I've got another program on, what is it called? Sunday morning, reframing from the inside out. So it's just a 1 hour lecture on the reframing process, and really looking at it close up. So
Hey, the bottom line is you got to come to Orlando and join us. Patty Scott's on the call tonight. She's got 2 days of pre-conference. 2 days or one day, Patty? 2 days, right, Patty? One day of pre-conference. Jessica Hanson's here. Lori Donnelly's going to be with us next week talking about her post-conference on IEMT specialty training. Bruce Eimer and Eric Rosen will be back next week to talk about their post-conference training. The bottom line is come and hang out with us, because you'll get a lot of great education and all the stuff you learn in the hallways in between. Make your plans. Come join us in Orlando. We'll be back next Monday, same time, for one more edition of the Presenters series. Oh, Valeria.
I have a question. I missed the first 2 weeks of this. Is there a recording or somewhere to find it?
Michael, where are the replays?
Yeah, there's a recording. It's a couple places. You can either go to the virtual chapter Facebook group where we post everything the next morning. So there's replays there, or on the IACT IMDH website. I'm sure that it's a couple places on there. It's in the Mind Matters forum because I put it there, but they
Okay.
also have a page.
Patty knows. Go ahead, Patty.
I just want to tell you, I found it accidentally on my big screen TV the other night. I watched it on YouTube.
Hmm.
I just typed in virtual chapter and it took me to I've seen it 3 times already,
Yeah.
each one of
And
them.
there's also a page at IACT's website where that mentions the presenter series and has the videos that you can look at as well. So there's several places, Valeria, and I hope that helps you.
Yeah,
Right,
thanks
thank
for
you.
asking. Thank all of you for attending. We'll see you next Monday or in Orlando, whichever comes first. Well, Monday will come first. See you soon.
Bye, everybody.
Thanks very much,
Thank
everybody.
you.
Thanks a lot.
Bye.
Oh, what's Irish and sits in the backyard?
What?
Patio furniture.
what kind of spells do leprechaun witches cast?
I don't know.
Lucky charms.
Ah,
Good night.
And today's the only day of the year I get to be a saint. St. Patty's Day.
That's right.
Night.
You know.
So cheers.
bye-bye.
Thank you.